Hey guys, Ed Bruehl, building generational wealth with Hamptons Real Estate. I got a great story. Joe, buyer, Jane, seller. Okay, it starts with Jane. 5 years ago, I met her. Her and her partner buy a house in East Hampton, crushed it, added value, turned it into a rental, used it, loved it. 3 years ago, she does her own, adds value, renovates it, rents it, cash cow, loves it, enjoys it. She's now selling that house for $1.7 million, and she'll keep the tenants in place, which are throwing off at least $120,000 a year. So it's a 7 cap, right? Call it a 5 cap. Joe calls, and the story's about Joe. And the reason I'm saying is because it's kind of the result of this new building generational wealth storytelling campaign, which is really just me talking about what I do. And the phone calls are so different. So he calls me and he says, "Hey, Ed, got a minute to talk about Hamptons Real Estate?" Sure. And he tells me everything. I mean, within 90 seconds, like every single thing. These are information, data points you're not going to get, but 7 to 9 conversations into a relationship. And he tells me everything. Me and my wife, we just got married. We want to buy a house. He's in nest mode, right up my alley. And I got $1 million in the bank, cash. I have $1 million in the portfolio, stocks and bonds. And I run a hedge fund. It's my own fund. So I get paid kind of sporadically. So my income's spotty, but I've got the money. And he's thinking, all right, I got to come up with $500,000 or $600,000 to buy a $1.1 million house. It's kind of what he's thinking. Like, look, Joe, here's the story. You could do what most talk about doing, buy a house, door A, right? Door A is buy the house. You buy the house. You go to the bank, you fill out some paperwork. Maybe after 2 weeks of back and forth, they tell you whether or not you're ready to be approved to buy a house. And you could get a 6% mortgage for 30 years, but be warned because home ownership's very risky and classic money pit story. It's real. Let's not deny it. Door B, we start talking. He's sharp enough to really dialogue it. I was like, hey Joe, you don't have any real estate in the portfolio, right? He's like, no, this will be my first purchase. And he knows the goal is to be a third real estate, a third stocks and bonds, and a third cash, depending on business cash flow. And he really starts diving in, and he starts thinking to himself, wait a second, so if I acquire Jane's house with tenant in place, it's already a 7 cap. And I only have to come up with $300,000 or $400,000. I'm like, yeah. He's like, changes everything in his mind. Literally, light bulb goes off. And he's thinking, oh my gosh, I can go $1.7 million in my portfolio for real estate. I got $700,000 cash. I still have my stocks and bonds. And the real estate was bought in an LLC. So there you go. Door A, you buy the house. It could be a challenge. It could be risky. Make sure you know what you're doing. Door B, you go into it eyes wide open, strategically, running it like a business, bought it as an LLC, treated like a rental property, so you've got all the expenses covered, and then you make your memories, you build your generational wealth, and you do it again. That's a great story about Hamptons Real Estate, and Joe will soon be like Jane, as will I and most of the people I work with, and may more and more people acquire and own Hamptons Real Estate for eternity.